Good morning, and thank you for joining the Oregon Employment Department for today's media briefing. We're going to wait just another couple minutes to give everyone time to log in before we get started. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. For today's briefing, we have Acting Director David Gerstenfeld, who is joined by State Employment Economist Gail Krumenauer. A couple of quick reminders: this call is being recorded, and we will post the recording online and send out the link after the briefing. We will take questions after opening remarks from Gail and David. If you have any technical difficulties or are otherwise unable to ask your question or you think of one later, you can always send us an email at communications@employ.oregon.gov and we'll assist you. I will now turn it over to State Employment Economist Gail Krumenauer, who will make some brief remarks, followed by Acting Director David Gerstenfeld. Please go ahead, Gail.
Thanks, Rebecca, and good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. This morning, the Employment Department released the jobs numbers and the unemployment rate for Oregon in August. Oregon's labor market still looks pretty strong. Employers added 9,300 jobs to non-farm payrolls over the month, and the unemployment rate rose slightly to 3.7%. Several sectors of Oregon's economy had large job gains in August. Government added 3,800 jobs over the month, and essentially all of those gains were in local government, and that's mainly due to schools. Leisure and hospitality added 1,900 jobs in August. Construction grew by 1,400 jobs over the month, and professional and business services added 1,000 jobs. As of August, Oregon had fully recovered the 282,000 jobs that were lost in the pandemic recession. Oregon's private sector also reached full jobs recovery in August, and private employers had 4,100 more jobs in August 2022 than they did in February of 2020. Now, although the total number of jobs has been regained, those jobs are spread out a bit differently now. Several sectors of Oregon's economy had already reached full jobs recovery before August and now have more jobs than they did before the pandemic recession. And those include construction, manufacturing, trade, transportation, and utilities, professional and technical services, and real estate and rental and leasing. And so we're seeing expansion and growth across many areas of Oregon's economy. Other sectors are lagging behind, though. The most notable is leisure and hospitality, which is still about 12,000 jobs below its February 2020 employment level. Leisure and hospitality is continuing to grow, though. It added the most jobs of any sector over the past year at 18,500, and it's been growing at the relatively fast pace of 9.9% over the past year. As I mentioned, Oregon's unemployment rate rose slightly to 3.7% in August from 3.5% in July. In August, Oregon's unemployment rate matched the US rate, which also rose to 3.7%. We're still near that really record low 3.4% unemployment rate that we saw just before the pandemic recession. And Oregon's labor force is continued to grow, although a bit more slowly in August. And the state's labor force participation rate, which was 63.5%, that's leveled off at that rate for the past 4 months. That's still the highest participation rate we've seen in a decade in Oregon. So despite the uptick in the unemployment rate to 3.7%, Oregon is still experiencing labor force growth and strong job gains so far in 2022. And I'll let Acting Director David Gerstenfeld give us some more updates from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail, and thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. We're happy to report that the first phase of our modernization project went live on September 6th as planned. The whole project remains on schedule and within budget. Our team worked together through the Labor Day weekend on final testing and completing the transition from the prior systems to our new system, Francis Online. This first phase of our new system supports combined payroll reporting for both unemployment insurance and paid leave organ contributions. Within the first day, nearly 1,000 customers created their account in Francis Online. Today, that number is over 1,750. The system allows our customers to do dozens of things that they weren't able to do themselves before. These are things like adding and updating contact information, including adding or changing an address, updating their own demographics, adding client accounts, requesting refunds, and making payments. We're also excited that we received our first equivalent plan application for the paid leave organ program within the first hour of the system turning on. As some context for the scale of the work involved with this first phase rollout of our modernization effort, we transferred 413 million pieces of data from our mainframe and other legacy systems to our new system, Francis Online. Carefully converting this data and being careful with our other minute-by-minute planning ensured that the weekend went smoothly and that customers were able to start using Francis Online at 7 a.m. on September 6th as planned. Francis Online's chatbot, which is available in both Spanish and English, is learning every day based on questions employers are asking, and we're also using those frequently asked questions to update our employer resource page at francisinfo.oregon.gov. The resource page also has infographics, short how-to videos, and a step-by-step guide to common tasks like creating an account and filing payroll reports. Additionally, we have a dedicated team answering questions over the telephone and by email. And we're already working on the next phases of modernization. Employers will start using Francis Online to pay their paid leave Oregon contributions and the statewide transit tax in January 2023. Then in September 2023, employees will use Francis Online to apply for and receive paid leave Oregon benefits. And at the same time, small employers can use the system to receive paid leave Oregon assistance grants. And we're still on track to launch unemployment insurance benefits in Francis Online in March 2024. Each part of this modernization effort is a monumental undertaking, and we know that with each phase, there will be some challenges and some adjustments that we have to make. The smooth rollout of this first phase shows how well our teams are working together, and we're already building on that approach and improving it. And our work on unemployment insurance and paid leave Oregon benefits, we are confident will go very smoothly as well. This is an exciting time for our ongoing continual improvement of how we serve Oregon workers and businesses. I also wanted to share some staffing news today related to our unemployment insurance program. In 2020, the Employment Department handled a 1,400% increase in benefits compared to 2019. This was more than 580,000 people receiving about $7.5 billion in unemployment benefits. That was in a single year in 2020, and that's more benefits than were paid out in the entire prior decade. We did all of this while adapting to numerous changes in federal and state unemployment programs and policies, and despite not yet having a modernized IT system. To meet the challenges of the pandemic, we hired and trained hundreds of short-term employees during 2020 and 2021, and also reassigned and trained many of our existing employees outside of the unemployment insurance team to process unemployment claims. We really appreciate how these short-term employees joined our team during a crucial moment to provide much needed help to people across Oregon, including to our existing dedicated employees who are doing heroic work trying to keep up with the public's need. At the end of September, about 200 limited duration contracted staff will be leaving the employment department because their assignments and contracts are coming to an end. These team members, along with our regular permanent staff in unemployment insurance and other parts of the agency, were instrumental in providing much needed unemployment insurance benefits and other services to record-setting numbers of people during the COVID-19 pandemic. Like other state agencies with temporary workload increases, we hire people into limited duration positions to handle increased workloads during recessions when unemployment is higher. We will still have some limited duration employees remaining because we still have significant work to do to serve our customers. But because we hired so many people during the COVID-19 pandemic to help meet the unprecedented needs of Oregonians at the time, and because of our current funding situation, we have a large number of positions ending at once. Unfortunately, our federal funding levels are not sufficient and have significantly declined. While there's an ongoing body of work, we're not able to extend these limited duration positions any further. We've been providing information and support to these employees to help people find other jobs. It really is difficult to have these positions end and to see some of our very valued employees move on. But we hope that these employees can recognize and that they're very proud of the contributions they made to helping individuals, families, and entire communities during a time of historic need. And finally, I have some updates on Paid Leave Oregon, which also remains on schedule and within budget. As I mentioned earlier, We got our first equivalent plan applications for paid leave Oregon on September 6th when we launched Francis Online. Our weekly equivalent plan focused webinars with employers are drawing 250 to 350 people every session. So we've decided to extend those past September due to their popularity. Links to the webinars are available on the Get Involved section of the paid leave website, paidleave.oregon.gov. The next big milestone for the Paid Leave Oregon program is in January, when both employers and employees will start paying contributions to the Paid Leave Oregon Trust Fund. It's from this trust fund that we'll start paying paid leave benefits and small employer assistance grants in September 2023. To make sure Oregonians know what to expect, Paid Leave Oregon is preparing a statewide outreach and advertising campaign aimed at reaching employers and helping them share information with their employees. We will add extra focus to employers in rural communities and to employers who are Black, Indigenous, and people of color. We've also launched our own Paid Leave Oregon social media pages, and we've been successful in engaging with employers and community organizations through social media. In addition, our Paid Leave outreach team is meeting with businesses and business organizations weekly throughout the state. Just in the past 2 weeks, they've met with the Malala Chamber of Commerce, the Micronesian Islander community in Salem, and Rogue Credit Union, and they attended Latino Fest in Madras. We're excited about the results that we're seeing, both from Francis Online and the development of Paid Leave Oregon. Despite the exhaustion from the pace of work over the past 2.5 years, we're energized seeing the fruits of our labor. There is still a lot of work to do, but it's very gratifying to start seeing the results of all of this work. And these results are a testament to our employees' dedication and innovation and our agency's group commitment to providing workers and employers with the services that they need and deserve. And I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca now for the question and answer portion of the briefing.
Thanks, David. We're now going to open the lines to members of the media to ask questions. We will call on you in the order you RSVP'd. Please make sure to state to whom you're directing your question, Gail or David, and please limit yourself to one question and one follow-up question. If you're joining us by phone, please make sure to unmute yourself by hitting *6. And if you don't get your question answered, please email communications@employee.oregon.gov. So first up is Mike Rogaway with the Oregonian.
Hi, I have a question for Gail first and then one for David. Gail, I sent you an email and I saw your response that the comeback for the recession is so much faster than in prior recessions. Talk a little bit about why the springback was better to recovering all those jobs and whether it picked up a little bit this year. Last I'd heard, it seemed like projections were fall that we would hit this, and we hit it in August instead.
That's a good question, Mike. Yes, the nature of this recession was different. So the next comparison that we have was the Great Recession from 2007 to 2009. And just the nature, the cause of each of those downturns was incredibly different. We had something that was a financial and housing focused recession during the Great Recession. We shed jobs, we lost jobs every month for about 2 years. So we were still losing jobs 2 years into that recession. And most of those layoffs were permanent. We also, once the recession stopped, we saw slow job growth for the first couple of years afterwards. So that really extended the recovery time from that recession. It took us more than 6 years to get back to where we had been before the downturn. If we look at the pandemic recession, you took what was otherwise a pretty healthy economy and we shut down businesses for public health and safety measures related to a global pandemic. So what happened was those closures happened and a lot of the layoffs that we saw were temporary. About 9 out of 10 layoffs that we had in the pandemic recession were temporary. And even though those closures did last for a while, and we had a couple of waves of them, later on in 2020, employers were able to pull back a lot of those workers. Of the workers that had regular unemployment insurance claims, 36% of them had gone back to that employer and were still working with them as of the winter of 2022. So employers were able to recall those workers, bring them back on the job. And that was really different than what we saw in the downturn before. We did see some acceleration in the past couple of months that really has boosted employment in terms of local government education. And what's happened there has been really schools that aren't laying off as much in the summer as they would have in the years prior to the pandemic recession. And so that's showing up as seasonally adjusted gains in the jobs as well. So there are two things that I would call out as structurally different and very recent trends that look a little bit different.
Great. Thank you, Gail. I really appreciate that. And David, question for you. Of the 200 contract workers who are being let go, what were these workers doing and how many are left doing those jobs?
So it's about 200 people that are left. Over the course of the pandemic, we had many, many hundreds of people that joined us for these limited duration assignments. The types of work that they've been doing has been really varied. They've been very flexible. It has been focused on the unemployment insurance program. At some points, they were taking initial claims. At some points, they were working in the pandemic unemployment assistance program to handle claims. A lot of them have been doing support and outreach, answering questions, a lot of the behind the scenes work where we have bodies of work that need to be done to clear claims to be paid. It really has been shifting quite a bit from one body of work to another over the course of the pandemic, which is something that all of our employees have been doing. We've been seeing the number of employees that we have go down over time. And part of that is a normal recessionary thing that we see as we get caught up and are doing very well with all of the incoming work. We have not the same need for as many people. And also in a really strong economy, some of the people that joined us temporarily look for and find other jobs and leave us. So we've been managing this through attrition over the course of the pandemic. And we're at the point now where, unfortunately, we just don't receive enough federal funds to continue on this significant group of about 200 employees.
Thank you.
Okay, up next is Peter Wong with Pamplin Media.
Hi, can you hear me? I didn't get mute. Hello?
Yeah. Hi, Peter. We can hear you, but you're pretty faint, so we may have to ask you to repeat something if we can't get all of it.
Okay. I'm not sure who this question would go to, but I do understand that one reason this pandemic downturn wasn't as dramatic as the Great Recession was the huge amount of money pumped in by the federal government, a lot of it in unemployment insurance benefits. So I wonder how much of a factor that was in making this downturn and layoffs truly temporary.
Thanks for the question, Peter. Yes, we did see that there was substantial differences in the timing and the level of federal stimulus that happened between the Great Recession and between the pandemic recession. I would classify both of those recessions as dramatic, just in very different ways and over different timeframes. But one of the things that has been a difference in terms of stimulus and the recovery has been that we've seen really strong ongoing demand for goods and services. Even as inflation has picked up, we've seen that strong demand continue. And that has put us in a situation in Oregon and across the US where there are more job openings than there are unemployed people. We're at this relatively low rate of unemployment, about the same as we were in 2019, but employers are trying to fill about twice as many job openings as they were then. And that's, I think, really because we've seen that while it's different across different households and across different areas, overall, we've seen that there's still a relatively strong household finances in aggregate in Oregon. And I think that that's one of the things that has been an ongoing result of the much stronger stimulus we saw in the wake of the pandemic recession.
Yeah,
Thank you. Oh, go ahead, David.
I was just going to say I agree with that, and I particularly agree with the both recessions were dramatic, I think, in just very different ways. I think this recession from the pandemic was actually much more dramatic in terms of the number of people impacted and in how quickly they were impacted. So from that sense, it was a much more dramatic impact. But I think what you were talking about was the impact to the overall kind of core structural pieces of the economy that have recovered so much quickly, and a number of stimulus efforts, including the unemployment benefits from all the various programs, were a key part of that. Not the only part, certainly, but from our expert economists and a lot of the other analysis that I've read, there's a consensus that that certainly was a big factor in keeping that demand for services and goods that Gail was talking about going through the pandemic, and keeping the underlying structure of the economy strong for when the preventative health measures eased. So they were both very dramatic, but in pretty fundamentally different ways.
Thank you.
Okay, it looks like we have some time for a few additional questions. So if anybody on the call has a question for Gail or David that's not already been answered, please feel free to raise your hand at this time. Let's go with Rob Manning of OPB. We need to get Rob unmuted.
Oh,
there we go.
Hi there. Did you hear part of that or no? I don't know.
No, you'll have to start over. Sorry,
All right,
Rob.
sorry. That's no problem. I have a question both for Gail and one for David. For Gail, can you sort of walk through the combination of unemployment rate going up and there being job gains at the same time, increase in the size of the labor force? So does that mean there are people coming in off the sidelines looking for work now? Like how do those numbers all fit together?
We have seen Oregon's labor force grow and continue to grow, and the labor force is actually larger now than it was prior to the pandemic recession. So that's something that has been a strong ongoing trend for us. And I do think we continue to see more people joining the labor force as there are plenty of opportunities out there for them to find employment. So we had an increase between August and September of about 6,000 more people who were unemployed. So people who, may be coming in and looking for work, but maybe just haven't found it as of the time they're asked in that survey. Or, maybe some people who have moved from one position to another, but there's a little bit of time that tends to happen in between those things. So, they've moved maybe temporarily from the employed to the unemployed column in that part of the labor force. So that can all be happening while employers are also adding jobs. The other thing that I think is pretty important to note is that the jobs numbers come from a survey of business establishments in Oregon. So asking non-farm payroll employers in Oregon, how many jobs do you have this month? And the unemployment rate is determined by a survey of households asking people in Oregon who live here, were you working this past month? And so there's a little bit of difference, right? I could be living in Oregon, but working across the border in Washington. I could be living in Oregon, but working remotely somewhere else. I could be, I may not be working for a non-farm payroll employer that's exactly located in the state. So that's not an exact one-to-one match in who's being asked those questions and how those numbers are being generated.
Okay, thank you. And my question for David is on the 200 staff people temporary people who are being let go at the end of September. It sounds like that's partly driven by a change in or a reduction in federal funding. and maybe if you had that ongoing federal funding, you would keep those people around. So is there an effect that just people in Oregon might feel as a result of these people not being there anymore? Is this going to lead to any kind of slowdowns or anything in terms of the processing of unemployment claims or anything else?
That's a really good question, Robin. These employees have been doing a tremendous amount of work, so it will be a loss when they go. We've become very adept over the course of the pandemic at shifting resources to the highest need and prioritizing what we work on. So there will be an impact. It will be primarily on some of those more backroom bodies of work. So we anticipate there might be some small impacts to customer service, but we still anticipate maintaining our standards of answering 90% of calls within 5 minutes, responding to the contact us inquiries within a week. We've been doing that consistently, and we anticipate being able to continue doing that. It's something that we're going to be watching very closely. And if we're seeing a bigger impact than anticipated, we will do our best to adjust resources to focus on those key priorities. And we'll, of course, share if we anticipate those standards or our ability to serve the public shifting. So those core functions of how quickly we answer the phone, how quickly we receive, process, and pay new claims and adjudicate claims, we don't anticipate significant changes there. Working through some of the other more behind the scenes backlogs of work that we need to continue doing, it will take longer to get through those.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's go to Bill Poehler with the Statesman Journal.
Yeah, hey, this question is for David. As far as the positions, the 200 positions that are being lost, can you tell us what the people in those positions, what jobs those people are doing?
Sure. For the most part, the classifications have been our business and employment specialists. And as I said, that they've been shifting exactly what they do. It's various parts of the unemployment program. So at times it's been doing the initial processing of claims. Sometimes it was doing outreach to people to follow up to get additional information or to clarify things. Sometimes it's the behind the scenes work to keep claims moving and address some of the required steps in our processes so that they get handled appropriately. Some of them have been really key to helping our permanent employees in terms of just shifting to wherever the biggest need is. That includes learning new bodies of work, wherever kind of the highest priority is, quickly getting trained up and answering. So it's been various parts of that unemployment, including PUA and all the other programs, all the different aspects of processing those claims.
Okay, and so that makes more sense. So as far as the Francis online rollout of that one, what did you all learn from that you can apply to the rollouts of the next phases of this of the program?
That's a really good question. And even over the rollout weekend, we were already having those discussions. We learned that a lot of our planning went really well. We were prepared not just for the types of things we encountered, but for lots of potential challenges that might have come up that didn't. And we learned the importance of having those plans, of having layers of support for our own employees as they adjust on day one to using a new system, and helping the public who's learning a new system, and having layers of support for the public too. So a lot of it was learning all the things that help prepare us, the system, and the public. In terms of the next rollouts, probably things that we're adjusting are some of our internal pacing. We were able to refine a lot of the really complex coordination needed between all the different parts of our agency. So it's the technical experts doing the coding and configuration of a system. It's our communications experts that help us say things in an easily understandable way and get things translated into multiple languages and formats. It's the program experts who are designing and figuring out how the system and the programs are going to work, and a lot of coordination with our partners. So getting feedback from them early as we're planning, and then as we're doing the work to see if it's going as intended or if we need to change course. That's been invaluable. It can be very time consuming to do all of that collaboration. It's absolutely vital and stood us in good stead, but we found some opportunities of how we can refine some of the ways that we develop materials to keep that going at the pace that we want and need to get these advantages of Francis Online out to the public for paid leave Oregon benefits and unemployment benefits. Frankly, this was for a technology implementation of this scale. This was a very smooth rollout. So I think our core learning was that a lot of the advanced planning that we did stood us in very good stead.
Okay, thanks, David.
Okay, I don't see any other hands, so we'll bring the briefing to a close. As a reminder, this call was recorded and we will send out links to the reporters who RSVP'd. We will also post a link to the recording on the media page at unemployment.oregon.gov. Thank you to everybody who participated today and for everything you are doing to keep Oregonians informed. Have a lovely afternoon.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.